All right, it's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. I am so excited for the year with Environmental Month. What a great way to get the year started. First off, I'd like to welcome our guests that are here that potentially will become provisionals for next year, and also to listen to our wonderful presentation. I would like to get the approval of last month's membership meeting as it is online. Are there any changes or additions to that? Could I get an approval? Thank you, Connie. I am very, very happy to announce to you that we did a dues review last month with the Finance Committee, and we have decided that there is no need for us to increase our membership dues, so they will remain the same as last year. We also will not charge any credit card fees. Now, we are going to be starting our membership sign up for next year on February 1st. And we are going to be having a table out front at our February and March meetings for you all to get signed up. You'll either be able to check, Zelle, or a credit card. You can do it online or at our meeting. And also this year, we have something special for people who have a little trouble managing the technology, is we are going to have technology buddies. So if you would like a technology buddy, know at the sign up, and that goes for if you want help signing up for programs for your membership, whatever it is. We have membership buddies here. We have technology buddies here. Remind everybody that on July 22nd at 6 o'clock we're going to be having our one program that is open to that is open to anyone, any guests that you want to bring, friends and family. We are doing the Patchwork Wild, the documentary, a panel discussion, and a reception over with the FGCU Water School. So please make sure we have a good turnout to that. I look forward to seeing lots of you that evening. You can bring your kids. It is a great opportunity. Something new about our area. Now, a little insider tip. We have a few tickets available for the tour at each of the times. So if anybody would like to get a ticket for a friend, family, for on the House and Garden tour, there are a few left. So please, if you want to touch base with Andrea, she can help you, and that way it won't go through Eventbrite, but there are a few available. So, I want to thank Fallon with Healthy Earth, sharing information. There's Fallon, one of our grant recipients, and she's going to be here for the meeting and staying here after. So if you haven't had a chance to say hello, please head over and see what they're doing. And I also want to just thank for their help of logistically always helping us get ready for our meeting. So the garden staff is wonderful. So I am going to turn it over now to the House and Garden tour and Denise for just a few words about the tour, which is coming up really quick.
I got to move it. Actually, it's coming up in 26 days exactly, but who's counting? As Abby said, we do have some tickets left on the Prime buses, which is 10, 12, and 10, actually just the 10 and 12, right? And 2? All, okay. But we have 29 left on the 8 a.m. So if you have friends, tell them to buy tickets. We'd really like to just sell this out. It would be really great. Additionally, are looking for some volunteers We've got about 80% of the volunteers filled, so there's really some spots that we could use some help. So if you want to do 2, that would be great. It would just be really nice to finish these up and get them filled. We're excited to share that we've sold over 100 orchids. So we get our $10,000 match, which is great news. And those that purchase them can pick them up the day of the 31st, after the event, after 3 o'clock, and if the following week in the office or the room maybe next to the office. I'd like to thank everybody for your incredible support. This is a big event, and it takes a village to make it all happen. And we appreciate each and every one of you being a part of this journey. And if you have any questions, ask Andrea. Thank you.
Not too short for me. Hi, I'm Connie, and of course you know I'm the chairman for the flower show. And we're getting ready for that. We're going full blown. I wanted to know, I understand that Judy Perkins has most of her member challenge filled. Is that correct? Yeah. All full. That's amazing. Okay, and we do have openings in, and of course the dreaded designs. Now, I know we're going to be starting. Arm twisting is going to be in about 2 weeks, so get ready to get phone calls from me also, besides Amy Cook. Okay, she's done a great job. I think we need about 30 more, is that correct? And about 16 more for botanical. Also, have the schedules are out in the table. I was a little late today, and I'm not going to explain to you why. And also, there's one thing, please read the schedule, okay? Because if you make a mistake, to be disqualified. So please read the schedule. Also, if you sign up for anything for the flower show as far as an exhibit, you are responsible to find a replacement if you cannot fulfill. I'm sorry, but you can't call me up 3 days before and say you're going to have to find somebody to take my place. But if you could, only if that would be an emergency, which it better be an emergency. But I think everything's looking pretty good, and I understand everyone is really excited. We have some volunteer women that are painting our camels, and I just saw the designs. They're going to be out of this world. So let's have fun doing this, and let's get it done. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Very excited that today our program will be about the environment. And I'm going to talk about something, yes, environment related, but kind of fun and very simple. So I'm going to invite all of you to join me in Bring Back Brooches. So, and I see some of you did wear brooches. Now, an environmentally sound thing to do. Can I have a volunteer to give a reason? Okay. Repurposing, yes. Anybody else have a thought on why this is a smart environmental thing? Well, when you buy a new thing, it needs to be shipped. They need to mine the metal and the gems. There's a lot of energy that goes into producing a new piece of jewelry. So dig into those drawers. I know I have my brooches, my mother's brooches, my grandmother's brooches. I mean, they're treasures. And start wearing them. And I'll give you a few fashion tips even. I'm such a fashionista, I have to look. Okay, so first of all, here's our traditional way. Another fun way, put it on your purse. And that's easy. Hair. You can do that, I've seen in Hollywood on men especially, is they're wearing a cluster of brooches on a tuxedo or a jacket. It's called a constellation. And then another thing that you can do is them seasonally. So in the summer, wear nautical, and in the winter, wear metallics, and in the spring, wear floral, or if you're a garden club person like all of us, you can wear your florals year-round. So anyway, just an easy, simple thing to do that saves the environment. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I forgot my announcements. Oh, I tell you, that's why I need notes. Okay. We are selling the black, a renewable oasis again. And it's available. It's $3 for each, and we do have brown bags to bring it home so you don't get the icky substance on you like green oasis even has. And then also, we do have a waiting list going for the tour of the Florida Gulf Coast University water school. You know, that's right here. If you are interested in going on that waiting list, just flag me down after at our table, which is featuring different items that we recommend using in your kitchen. So just come by and see me, and I'll put you on the list. Okay, now I'm done.
Thanks, Patty. Welcome, everyone. Kathleen Biggins is the founder and president of Sea Change Conversations, where she combines decades of communications expertise with a deep commitment to climate education. A former professional, Kathleen shifted her focus to climate advocacy after witnessing the impacts of Hurricane Sandy. Today, she travels nationwide presenting the Sea Change Primer, a clear, engaging explanation of climate science and its implications. Kathleen has spoken to more than 25,000 people, business, education, and civic organizations, and represented Sea Change at the United Nations Climate Conference. She lives in Princeton, New Jersey, and is an active member of the Garden Club there of Princeton. We welcome you. Thank you.
Yeah, this one's fine. Test, test. You guys can hear just fine? Yeah. Terrific. Well, first off, I'm thinking of all the brooches that are home. My grandmother's, so I will think about that. Second of all, I'm enough to attend the house tour several years in the running. I'm coming on the late bus this time. So that's your bus. All right. So I'm really looking forward. It's always such a glorious day. So I am going to take you guys through a 50-minute course on climate change. It's going to bring you up, it's going to drop you down, but I promise at the end, I think you will feel hopeful. So please stick with me because it's a complicated topic, but it's a really important topic. And I'm going to fly through some questions to the end that just kind of helps with the flow. So. All right, so whenever we walk into a room to talk about climate change, we say we don't walk in alone. We say we walk in with 3 800-pound gorillas in the room with us. And the first 800-pound gorilla is the fact that we all has always been changing due to natural causes. We've had crocodiles in the Arctic, and we've had ice ages. But this time, scientists say it's different. That after a period of remarkable stability for over 10,000 years, human activity are triggering a period of instability. And we're doing it when there are 8 billion of us on the planet today, 10 billion projected for mid-century. And we can't all just pick up our lean-tos and follow the food and water resources as they react to a changing climate. The second 800-pound gorilla in the room with us is the fact that fossil fuels have been incredible friends to us. Before we discovered them, our lives were short and brutal. They have given us a vibrant economy and a high quality of life. But scientists say, if we continue to use them the way they will begin to do the opposite, actually harm our GDP and lower our quality of life, especially for our kids and our grandkids. And the third 800-pound gorilla in the room with us is the fact that this is a tough, tough topic to talk about. Perhaps it is or Thanksgiving table? Yeah, it was for mine for many years. But it hasn't always been this way. George W. Bush, the Republican president, was elected saying he was going to beat the greenhouse with the White House, use White House action to solve the climate. There were multiple bipartisan bills introduced through his 2 terms. In 2007, Newt Gingrich, the conservative leader, sat right next to Nancy Pelosi, the liberal leader, on a couch, cheek to cheek, and did a commercial saying that cap and trade was a way to approach this threat. And then in 2000, both parties' presidential platforms, different ways of addressing it, but agreeing that it needed to be addressed. So what happened? Well, people who were active during that period tell us that when Al Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize for his movie on the inconvenient truth, it was kind of a watershed moment. On the left, people were wildly happy. But on the right, a lot of people felt that it tied that issue directly to Al Gore, and we now had a new litmus test: conservative or makes a good liberal. And the media didn't help. On the left, they wrote we had to be anti-car, anti-cow, and anti-capitalist in order to address it. And on the right, it really began being covered as a social war issue. Research shows that Fox News in 2006 had of their coverage saying that climate change was real. By 2009, 90% said it was a hoax. So we had this hardening across party lines. But if you fast forward to today, most of us get that climate change is happening. We're seeing it in the world around us. The majority of Americans get influencing it. But where we can't seem to agree is on how to evaluate the risk. Is it an existential risk, as the Secretary General of the UN has said, one that if we do not pivot hard to address will harm our economies and harm our children's future? Or is it more of a tempest in a teapot? Or as the Secretary of Energy has said, merely an inconvenience that we need to accept in order to have a modern world, and one, if we pivot too hard to address, will harm our economies and harm our children's futures. And wanting to do the right thing for our kids, believing deeply in the ethic of stewardship, of leaving the earth at least as good as we received it, but not wanting to get sucked into something that often feels overhyped and sensationalized. So how should we evaluate this change? Well, we would suggest that we would evaluate it by dividing it into 3 parts, the way we evaluate any major risks in our lives. And to do that, we first judge how likely is it to happen. Okay, that's Phil. There we go. Can we get rid of the extra box so they aren't seeing it in stereo? Great, thank you. So how likely is that threat to happen? Okay, so if it does happen, how dangerous are the consequences? Are they ones that we really care about? Or are they ones that we really want to try to avoid? And then that third way is, or decision is, how expensive or difficult is it to avoid that risk? So you agree that's how you evaluate risk in your lives? Please, it can happen. Can I live with the consequences? And how difficult is it to avoid? Yep. Okay. So let's jump into that first part. How likely is it to happen? Well, we know that it is more than likely to happen. We know that it is happening, and that's because we understand the basic physics of how greenhouse gases work. And it's been for over 150 years and is not controversial. So let's jump back to science class in 5th grade for a minute and remind ourselves what greenhouse gases do. So when the solar radiance comes in, it comes down and passes through our atmosphere and strikes the Earth's surface. Some of that energy, but quite a lot of it ricochets back out into space. And when it does so, it is at a different wavelength. And this new wavelength is partially captured by a teeny tiny portion of our atmosphere, less than 1%, that is comprised of greenhouse gases, which we call carbon dioxide, methane, dioxide, and even water vapor. Without this teeny tiny portion of our atmosphere being comprised of greenhouse gases, we would have a frozen planet. So they do an outsized role in keeping our planet habitable. But it simply means that when we add more of them, they do their job. They capture that ricocheting energy and re-radiate it back down to the Earth, heating us up and adding energy into our climate systems. Another way to think about this is the balance of carbon dioxide. I think we all know there's a balance between plants and animals, right? The way we breathe. But we may not know there's also a balance in where nature stores carbon, in the earth, in the air or atmosphere, and in the ocean. And I'd like to call your attention to these two words right here, fossil fuels, because I think if we consider what they are, we can understand what's going on. So fossil fuels are just little animal matter that fell to the earth millions of years ago. And with time, heat, and pressure, got silted over and turned back into pools of elemental carbon, which today we call coal, oil, and natural gas. And humans came along and said, wow, really portable, really storable, I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna use it to power my transportation, to run my factories, and to create the incredibly vibrant economy that all of us have benefited from. But in doing so, humans unwittingly were taking dioxide that had been sequestered deep underground over millions of years and started to pump it up into the atmosphere at the alarmingly fast rate of about 40 billion tons of carbon every single year, much faster than it happens in nature, and so much of it that reabsorb it to get back into the old balance. And because we know that adding in greenhouse gases will inevitably make the temperatures go up, it's no surprise that every major institution that watches this says the exact same thing. And that is that we have raised our temperature 1.5 degrees C or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit already. Now, I know a lot of you may be from northern climes, and a 1.5 degree increase or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit might sound like a really good idea on a cold winter's day. But in fact, that's a huge difference for a global average. So we're going to get into this a little more into the deck, but don't let those small numbers fool you. It means for a very different experience on the surface of the planet. And we can see climate change happening with. Take a look at this video from NOAA, which shows what's happening to the Arctic Ocean. And what we're seeing is the mature ice, which is depicted in white, melting and leaching away and being replaced by immature ice and open water, which is light blue. And you can see from the start to 2021. And the reason why this is so critically important is because that white ice is highly reflective. It means more of that initial solar radiance rebounds and less of it gets absorbed. When we lose it, it means we're baking in temperature increases for future generations. We also know that's happening through a really interesting discipline called atmospheric chemistry. Now, atmospheric chemists can literally make fuels in the air that come from burning fossil fuels. And that's because they have a different isotopic composition, a different fingerprint, if you will. So we can tell which of these greenhouse gases come from us and that we are putting up the majority of them. The can tell that climate change is indeed happening is by looking back in time. Looking back using proxies like ancient ice core. And this scientist, who is a paleoclimatologist, is looking to find little air pockets that were trapped in the snow, in the ice when snow fell and froze over, going back 800,000 years. And they can liberate these little air pockets and see what the carbon dioxide levels were going back that far. And what do the paleoclimatologists tell us? That we are uncharted territory. That modern humans have never experienced carbon dioxide levels at the ones we have today. So let's take a closer look. For the last 800,000 years, our carbon dioxide levels have naturally bandied between 150 and 300. These were through the natural cycles the Earth always goes through an ice age and a thaw, and an ice age and a thaw. And then you can see in 1910, we broke out of the natural pattern, breaking over 300 parts per million. Today, we are at 429 parts per million. And scientists say if we were to continue the path, we would get close to 800 parts per million by the end of the century. So hopefully you're with me that we do indeed know that climate change is happening. Let's move to that second part of the risk assessment. What are the potential consequences? Are we comfortable living with them? Okay, guys, this is my favorite slide. Everyone else hates it, but it's my favorite, so I'm going to share it. And the reason I think it's so important is because, to me, it shows the big picture and just how aberrant our current situation is. So let's go back 20,000 years. This axis tells us temperature from about 8 degrees colder to about 11 degrees hotter. The golden line is average global temperature, and the white are just some milestones for us to have as we evaluate the chart. So 20,000 years ago, we were in a glacial period. It's what we call an ice age. Really cold. There was a mile of ice over the northern part of our country, and things were much less habitable. And then over about 8,500,000 years, nature moderated, coming up to what more or less has been the average global temperature for the last 10,000 years, which is right around 6 height. And this is kind of a sweet spot for our species and the other species that have evolved to live on the Earth with us. And when we got to that temperature, guess what? We were able to start farming, to create civilizations. This little hillock was warm enough when the Vikings could grow vegetables in Greenland. The divot was when the glaciers came down. It was very cold. There was food deprivation. There were even wars, just showing how changes in changes in surface temperature make for big changes on how people experience life on the planet. And then you see the temperatures going up, up, and away, expected to land somewhere between 3.6 and 10.8 degrees hotter by the end of this century. So we are gardeners in this room. Let's think about it. 8,000 years for nature to moderate, to literally march trees from Mexico to Montana to create the ecosystems and the biodiversity that have supported all of us. And now through our activities, we are triggering a big change, a really big change. And we're doing it so fast that that potential delta is happening in the next 100 years. And that's scary, right? And that's what pulled all of the world together at the Paris Accord to say, hey, we can't go there because it's too dangerous to go there. We need to keep our levels at the 1.5 degrees C, or at worst case, 2 degrees C increase. Because at those levels, we think we can keep ourselves safe. And I should say that today, because of activities done since Paris, we're kind of geared to a 5.6, so we're kind of in the middle. So let's think about what these natural changes are that was so alarming. As we do so, I'm going to ask you to think about them through 3 specific lenses. The first is, how will these natural changes impact jobs and economy in your area? Second, how will it impact your and your family and community's health and safety? And third, how would it impact your exposure to geopolitical instability, which we really experience primarily as terrorism acts, civil chaos, and migration, immigration? Does anyone in the audience brave enough to take a guess as to why I'm asking you to evaluate these through these 3 specific lenses? Come on, somebody.
Everybody makes it personal.
What?
Everybody wants to make it personal.
Yeah, so this makes it personal, sort of? Yes. So really, really good. These are the 3 say are most important to them when they go to vote. And we believe that climate change will impact all of them profoundly. So let's see if you agree. Let's hop into some of these changes. Whoop. So let's start with heat. And what we're going to see is how average global temperature has changed from the summer of 1880 up until 2024. When it's blue, it's colder than average, white average, yellow warmer, red hotter. I heard that. It is sobering. And you can see that the red really comes crescendoing in because we're not just breaking records, we're really shattering them. Take a look at this bar chart. It says the same thing, but maybe a little easier to read. But what it shows is that 2024 was the hottest year ever recorded. The last 10 have all been the hottest years. 10 hottest years ever recorded. And 2025 looks like it's coming in right at 2023 and will be the second hottest year ever recorded. So what does that mean for folks down here? And I realize you guys may not be here year-round, but I tried to localize our information. So here in the Naples area, it means that spring days are hotter. We have more heat during the spring. You may have noticed that in your gardens. We have more hot days in the fall. So really what's happening is summer is kind of expanding through bigger parts of the year. But the thing that's truly concerning is indeed the summertime. It shows you that before, for these last 10,000 years, we were in a position where there was a little bit of extreme cold and a little bit of extreme heat. But what we've done with climate change is push it all up. So much more of our year will be in that extreme heat. And we're seeing it. In Naples right now, we have 31 more days that are considered over the 90th percentile. So the summers here are getting hotter. So that's what's happened already and what we've measured. Let's take a look at what's forecast. And you can see that if we continue on our current emissions, it's predicted that we'll have a lot more of 100-degree days. Right now, I guess Naples gets up to around 99, 98. Anyone here year-round? Is it right? 99, but doesn't really break 100. But as we go into mid-century, they expect to have, 12 days. And then, of course, it gets much greater as we go towards the end of the century. And so can we translate that? There's something called latitude shift, that almost all of our cities are going to feel like cities that are much further south today. So for Naples, it's expected to feel like the southernmost bit of Texas, a 6-degree increase. And for those of you from the Midwest, it might even be a little bit more surprising. So Minnesota is expected to have summers that are 10.5 degrees hotter by 2100 if we continue on our current emissions path. And those of you from the East Coast, like Columbia, South Carolina, for our grandchildren, right? Obviously, this is not for us, but for future generations, things are gonna get toasty. So let's think about those 3 lenses we talked about. The first one was jobs and economy. What do you think is going to happen to jobs and economy when things get so much hotter? Buddy? Farming and agriculture, big. What about infrastructure? What happens to roads and bridges and tarmacs when things get super hot? Right? Infrastructure too. What happens to crops? Hot and cross their thresholds. They die. So we can see across our economy, this just one aspect of climate, which is the increased heat, has real ramifications for jobs and economy. So let's move to that second list, which was our health and this is just a quick, shortened list of some of the things that excess heat does. It leads to heat stress and heat stroke. It exacerbates cardiovascular and lung disease. It leads to premature births. It leads to more aggressive crime, including murder and suicide. Leads to cognitive decline. diseases because we get so dried out. And this one was the one that snapped my head back, severe burns. And that's because already in the Southwest, when it's really hot and you trip and fall against your mailbox or fall off your bike, the pavement and the metal is so darn hot that you can get a second-degree burn. So we don't want to go there, right? Fun. The other thing that we talked about was geopolitical stability. So if we're going to get hotter, what do we think is going to happen to Central America and South America? And what does that mean for people whose economies are more fragile and don't have the ability to keep their family safe? They're going to move. And so it's anticipated that we will have migration pressures unlike anything that we've seen before. Okay, enough of the heat. Let's move to, remember guys, I told you I was going to depress you first. So I'm working on it, but I'll get you on the other side. Let's quickly move to food, because this is really tricky. And food is very much interrelated with heat. Crops have certain thresholds over which they begin to fail. And we are hitting those thresholds for many of our biggest crops. Not necessarily wheat yet, but already for sorghum and corn in many parts of the world. But what's predicted by the World Resource Institute, which is a nonpartisan group, by mid-century, if we have that 3 degrees C or 5.4 degree increase, is that the major crop areas, the Rice Bowl, will have significant decline. Our own breadbasket, significant decline. And even our salad bar and our wine cellar of California, significant decline. There is some growth in the very far north, but that's not where our population centers are. So scientists are coming up with new crops that will be able to sustain us. I'm not saying that this is writ in stone, but I am saying this is the type of consequence from climate change that I don't think we always factor into our thinking. And we're feeling it already. Who has bought chocolate or olive oil or coffee this year? Anything? Yeah, exactly. And it's because the areas where we grow those crops are becoming less habitable for those crops. They're becoming, that's not the word I'm looking for, but they are no longer suitable for those crops. And I was actually lucky enough to be over in Spain just this past week. We went to a beautiful grove of old olive trees that were 1,000 years old, and they were talking about how they were losing them because it's gotten just too hot for olive trees. And it just broke my heart. Okay, but heat isn't just in the oceans, and this map kind of gives us a sense of how hot the oceans are. They're absorbing the biggest part of the heat. And the thing that just snaps my head back is how much hotter it's predicted to get. So just 2 summers ago, in 2023, the temperature of the ocean was measured at 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty darn hot, right? And coral reef experts tell us that that tropical temperature water is moving north, and that by the end of this century, the waters off of Georgia will be tropical in temperature, and by the end of the century, Boston will have tropical waters. That's the type of change that we're setting into motion for our great-great-great-great-grandkids. We're making the world a different place for them. Okay. I don't always show this slide, but I did. Coral reefs are just so critically important to coastal communities. And because the water is getting so hot, they are getting bleached out and they are dying. This is where those small numbers, I remember I said don't let the small numbers fool you, come into play. If we could keep the temperature increase to the 1.5 degree increase, we think we can 30% of our coral reefs. If it goes all the way to 2 degrees, it's anticipated we will really lose almost all. So every smidgen of a degree matters and is worth fighting for. And the thing about the coral reefs for you all down here is that coral reefs are important barriers for storms and the power of the waves and the destruction they do. And also, it's little bits of coral that make up our beaches in the sand. So if we lose our coral reefs, we lose a lot more than just a beautiful place to snorkel. Anyone want to guess where this rainstorm caused this type of mass Where? Texas? New Jersey? Okay, I'm hearing all sorts of great places, and that's because it's happening everywhere. And it's because of basic physics. Because the oceans are warmer, more water vapor. Because the air is warmer, it can hold more water vapor. For every degree C, it's 7% more water vapor, which simply means that when conditions are right, that we are more likely to have these cataclysmic flooding storms instead of restorative. And you can see from this chart, it is indeed happening all across our country and really all across the world. So let's move to sea level rise. Obviously, that's a really important topic for you right here in this gorgeous paradise. Anyone want to guess what the sea level rise prediction is for 2050? 1 foot. 1 foot. And by the end of the century, potentially another 2, though if we're really unlucky with some of the ice sheets down in Antarctica and Greenland, it could be a bit more. So what does that mean? Well, it means for people who have shoreline property, and especially of Naples, that by 2050, many of our properties will be underwater, meaning that an average high tide will flood at least 1 time a year. So that does not mean it's truly underwater. It just is saying that the tide will be coming. So we are definitely working against nature here to keep our town safe. But there's a lot we can do to do so. But I wanted to share this with you because, again, I hope the message is not what's hitting us today, but what we're setting in motion for tomorrow. So over here, this is Florida today. First panel. The second panel was Florida 20,000 years ago when we were in that major ice age, and so much of the water on the earth was up on the land in glaciers and stuck in ice sheets, right? So it was double as fat. But this was Florida 100,000 years ago when it was the same temperature as we're expected to be by mid-century. So that doesn't mean this is coming to us now. It means we're setting it in motion for hundreds of years in the future. But we're changing the world we live in, not recognizing the changes we're putting on to future generations. And of course, this is happening everywhere. It's happening at all of our major cities that hug the coastlines. It's happening with all of our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges. So much of what we depend on economically are on the coastline. So again, we're setting motion that's going to be really hard for future generations to handle. Okay, health. This is more current. Fleas, ticks, mosquitoes are spreading because they like the hot temperatures and they can bite us longer through the year. Pollens are getting worse because they get supercharged by the extra carbon in the air. It's causing greater allergies, which maybe you guys have experienced in your hometowns, or maybe not down here. And because things are so dry, and I know you guys are in a super drought, and you know it from your own gardens, when a fire starts, whether it's lightning or human cause, it's more likely to become a conflagration. And fire is the #1 threat that scientists point to that will be the biggest threat to humanity by 2050. And in part it's because the dangerous smoke can travel so far that it affects a wide swath. So as you can imagine, all these lovely things that we've set into motion are some economic damage. This is a graph showing how $1 billion disasters have been going up. And many of these, not all, are due to being exacerbated by climate change. And the point I want to make here is that climate change isn't responsible. We've always had natural disasters before. But what scientists say is that we're loading the dice and stacking the deck, making them more likely to happen and more powerful and expensive when they do. Now, a really big caveat that we hear a lot, and is absolutely true, is that humans are putting ourselves in harm's way. We're building in Naples, in fire-prone areas. We're building in places and we're putting treasure and people in areas that will be hit more and more. And that means that the bill gets higher and higher. So scientists say we've kind of put a bullseye on our own backs. So it's not just climate change that's doing it, but also just where we've decided to move. And as you can imagine, insurance companies are taking notice. Sorry. This is a chart that shows where it's the hardest to get new insurance in some areas and how much it's gone up. And the thing that I think is interesting is even seeing a lot more increases as well, in part because of hailstorms the stones are actually getting bigger because of climate change. And what it means is there are a lot of groups taking a look now at our properties and being able to forecast what the risks may be where we live. Zillow was providing this single listing on any that was for sale. They have taken it down and you have to hit a link now because there was kind of an outcry from realtors, and I understand why. But I'm just saying the information is there and the insurance companies are looking at it, right? And so what we've got to think of, if a lot of places are getting to be uninsurable, what does that mean for mortgages, right? According to Jerome Powell, it means that we could very well not be able to get mortgages in certain areas. And if we can't get mortgages, what does it mean for the mortgages that already exist and are in mortgage-backed? And what does it mean to municipal tax bases, right? So it's a lot of people saying the insurance is the canary in the coal mine and that the ramifications could be bigger later. All right. It's not just our homes that are at risk. This is the S&P, where different classes of assets are currently projected to have significant hits as we hit 2050. This is from BlackRock, showing that many parts of the South will have depressed or negative economic growth due to climate change as things get hotter and more storms occur. And this is Deloitte, saying that if we move ahead on our current emissions path, we could lose 4% of GDP or $1.5 trillion every single year. So why are we heading on this path? Right? And then the question is, what does it mean for other species? Do we have any birders in the room? Okay. So you must know that the Audubon Society has said that 2/3 of North American birds are under threat from climate change. 2/3. And it's just not just our animals, but it's also our sacred space. Redwood forests or your own marshlands here. We're losing our sacred spaces. And I don't know how to put a price on that, but to me it's priceless. Okay. I'm going to pick you up right now. Right now. I want to share this with you, and honestly, I left a lot out. As depressing as that was, I left a lot out. But we're changing the norms of nature, and that has repercussions for human systems as well. Okay, so let's work on that third part. How difficult or expensive is it to avoid the risk? Well, here's the good news, guys. It is getting easier and a lot less expensive to act. The economic equation has changed and been turned on its head. The cost of inaction is now much greater than the cost. So, you guys remember the old economic equation? Climate change is going to happen to far-off people and far-off lands. We need to strengthen our economy today and let them deal with it if and when it comes. Remember that one? The new equation is climate change is here and now, and as taxpayers, we are paying for it today, and it more so if we continue on our current path. And we have the new technologies that will enable us to have vibrant economies, high quality of life, and have less risk. So what do we need to do? Climate and energy is intertwined in every single way. We need to create a system that supports us and, again, gives us this vibrant economy, but does it in a safer way. We need a system that's affordable, reliable, and safer. So what do we need to do? We need to create ways to make fossil fuels safer to use. We need to innovate new systems and products. More modern and flexible grids. Our grid is like the road system in the 1950s before they had highways. It needs to be upgraded. We need to electrify everything we can. Now, that's not because I'm picking winners or losers. How many people here have an electric car? Okay. and you put your hand on the hood. Is it hot? It's cool, right? Who here has a combustion engine? When you put your hand on the hood, is it hot? That is because almost two-thirds, more than two-thirds of the energy that is put into that car goes as heat. It's not used to push the car forward. So electricity can allow us to do more with less. And we also need to find ways to use our energy more efficiently and to secure the new materials that we need for the new technologies. So one of the things that we could do is work to stop methane leaks. Scientists say it's the #1 way that we could slow the increase in temperature. But we can't see them, right? So how do we know they're happening? But we can. With infrared cameras, we can see that right here at this compressor statement, they are flaring carbon dioxide, methane, polluter, up into the air. This is the low-hanging fruit. If we can stop methane leaks, we can do, as I said, begin to slow the increase in temperature. The other thing that there's a lot of excitement around, though it is still pretty expensive, is carbon capture. This is a plant in Sweden that sucks the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and then sells it to a nearby Coca-Cola factory to put fizz in our Cokes. Yes. Repurposing that carbon dioxide in many different ways. But it's still pretty expensive to working on it and investing in it. But in the meantime, there's some new contenders that are clean and considered firm, meaning that they're available 24 hours for use. And one of the ones that we're hearing so much about now is nuclear. It's having a renaissance. And a lot of people feel that these new small nuclear reactors factory and shipped out and slotted into a data center, or into an abandoned coal plant can be a big part of the answer. The first one is expected around 2030, but many people think by 2040 nuclear is going to be playing a much bigger role in our geothermal. This is not your grandmother's geothermal. It is the coolest geothermal ever. We now have the ability to bore down 3 miles to get down to where the heat is intense and the pressure is intense and the energy that it holds is intense. Up and use it for heat and electricity. So keep your eye on this. It's a really important new technology that we're going to be hearing quite a lot about. And then the last one that I want to highlight is fusion. Anyone know about fusion? Mm-hmm. Yes. Very cool. So fusion is the power of the sun brought right down to Earth, which is putting atoms together to create energy instead of breaking it apart like regular nuclear does. And this has always been out of reach, but we've had so many advances in other areas, lasers, magnets, AI, that this is expected putting out energy perhaps as early as the 2030s. But in the meantime, really the nuts and bolts are being carried by renewables. And that is because wind and solar have dropped so precipitously in cost. They're now about 40% cheaper than on a global basis. So I'm going to let you look at that for a minute. But I want to make a really important point, guys. The US has some of the cheapest natural gas in the world. And so for us, the delta is a little bit less, but it's coming. In places in our Southwest, in LA, they just feel that was 25% the cost of putting in a new fossil fuel plant. Not so much in Boston, not so much in Princeton, but in many parts of the US, we are finding that this incredible savings is really too good to ignore. And what that means is we've seen an incredible growth within the solar and wind. And in fact, the IEA predicts that by 2030, solar and wind will overtake fossil fuels on a global basis and provide more energy than fossil fuels, which is a total disconnect from what we thought even 5-10 years ago. And part of the reason this is working is because of this refrigerator. Why do I have a refrigerator on the slide? Because refrigerators were miracle workers for our food supply, right? Because you used to have to go buy your food, eat your food. You couldn't store it. All this time, we've had to make our energy, use our energy. We couldn't store it. But now batteries are providing the surface that we can take energy when it's super cheap at the height of the summer day and save it for the evening time. So it's changing the way the energy system works. And again, this should all be keeping our eyes on. This past year, 96% of everything that came on for new generation was non-fossil in the United States. And you can take a look at how it's shaping up as far as investments. There's twice as much investment in clean as versus fossil fuel. And the IEA, as we transition, once we invest in the clean, it will start to bring down our home cost. And I think it might surprise you that some areas in the Midwest already get a huge amount of energy from wind. Iowa, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, 50%. And anyone want to guess the biggest state that makes the most renewables in the country? Texas. The great state of Texas. They get about 40% from renewables, and they're #1 in solar, #1 in wind, and closing in on being #1 in batteries. What that means is during the 22 crisis when Ukraine got invaded, Texas saved over $11 billion because they had so many renewables in their mix. And renewables are innovating as well. I think we all just think of them as ugly things that take up landscape, but in fact, there's some ways of using them. This one over here is a parking lot in France, which has a law that all major parking lots need to have solar. This is a brownfield at an old abandoned coal mine. This is a 3D solar project that provides 50% more energy, and it's kind of sculptural. This is a windmill, and it is capturing the jet turbulence as the jets take off. And this is on top of one of the major irrigation canals in California, so it is protecting the water for evaporation as well as providing energy. And another thing that a lot about is what happens when we mix agrivoltaics, meaning we mix solar and farming, whether it's crops or with sheep. And what we're finding is that the sheep actually do much better because it's cooler and there's more biodiversity in the grasses underneath. And don't they look happy? And we're doing solar in unusual places, on the oceans. And China just announced they're going to build the first one in space, where we will microwave the energy down to the Earth's surface. And it's bringing jobs. 80% of all jobs are coming in these new formats. And they're bringing jobs all across the country. But we have two really big challenges right now that are brand new this year. And that is that our electricity demand is skyrocketing. It has been stable for a decade. In part because of but in part because of AI. Also, our costs are going up. And this is a little bit, this might be the scariest thing I've told you all day, but the costs so far have gone up mainly because we've needed to replenish our infrastructure. We had to rebuild after fires, after floods. The cost of AI hasn't been factored in yet, and that's coming at us like a freight train. So again, we said we needed reliable, we said we needed safe, but we also said we needed affordable energy. And this is where we're running into a real interesting challenge. If you take a look at what can come on in the cheapest way, the quickest way, it's renewables. So it's an unlimited resource. There's enough solar in an hour to power the entire Earth for a year. There's enough wind on the US to power our economy for 9 years. It provides energy sovereignty, meaning each country then gets to control its energy instead of being dependent on someone else. Proven technology, now more affordable than fossil fuels, and can be built faster than natural gas and nuclear. And another challenge we have is that China is in the game. They outspend us more than the EU, UK, and US together, responsible for 26% of its GDP growth, and using it for clout around the world. And you can just see how far behind we are in the race for new technology, all across the board. Put this in because this is something I think you guys are going to hear a lot about. And that is that solar panels from China and batteries are so darn cheap that farmers in Pakistan and homeowners in Pakistan are buying it directly to circumvent their utility. South Africa as well, Vietnam as well. And the fastest growing country in the world is Saudi Arabia. And the innovation is coming in a lot of different places across our transportation, our construction, our manufacturing, and how we grow our food, and across transportation. EVs were responsible for 25% globally last year, only about 10 in our country. And this is a very cute EV that charges 250 miles very quickly, and it's only $7,000. And innovation is also on how we treat our farmlands and our natural lands, and in the value we are giving natural spaces. But even with all this innovation, we are still in a race. At the time of the Paris Accord, we were at this red line, really going to temperatures that were extraordinarily dangerous. Because of the actions countries have taken all around the world, we've come way down. But with promises, we could get down to, that have already been put but not implemented, we could get down to the gold line. But where we need to be is the green line, which means pedal to the metal. We need to make changes, and we need to do it quickly. And we do matters. When we turn on our car, or we turn on my gas stove, which I still use, the emissions I'm putting up today are going to harm future generations out 1,000 years. That's how long carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere. Each generation will have a bigger burden to share. So, hello, what can we do? The first thing we need to realize is this is not a political issue, it's a human issue. This is an all hands on deck, run to the dike and put our hands in the holes, and let's get. There are conservative ways to do it, and there are liberal ways to do it. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that we all begin to care enough that we want action. We need to start talking about it. Please share some of the information you learned here today, because we need to build the social consensus for change. We need to leaders, no matter what side of the aisle we sit on. There are a lot of conservative leaders who understand the risk and would like to have support from their constituencies to move. There are also needs to engage on the local level. It's where we have the most power, the most leverage. If you take personal action, if you buy that electric car, sure you talk about it, because we can't just do it in isolation. Support climate education in your schools. We need to prepare the next generation so they're ready. And we also need to support science and investment. It's the seed corn for the innovations that will keep us safe tomorrow. So we are the first to understand the risk of climate change. We are the first ones to feel the brunt of it on our shoulders. We're the first generation to understand that we are leaving a damaged world for our kids and our grandkids. And we are the first generation to have the tools to do something about it. And the question in this room, and all of us on this planet, is what will each of us choose to do? Thank you, and I look forward to your questions. Okay. Whew. So you guys all got course, because you stayed awake and you listened. Do me a favor, there are surveys on your chairs. Please take a minute to fill them out and just leave them on your chairs, and I'll collect them at the end. But I'm really hoping that we have some questions. Does anyone have a question? Yes.
One of the points that you made on your last chart was that we need to talk. They were elected for 2 years or 6 years, and the first thing they do when they get into office is start running for the next election. And they're afraid to take a hard stand. And when you go to talk to them, and garden clubs do that, they go to Washington every year with their members. Members tend to pat you on the head and say, there,
Yeah.
better. They don't take you seriously. And so what we have to do somehow is make them uncomfortable with what they're doing to climate issues.
So what hearing a lot, because I tour in the South a lot, what I'm hearing a lot is this economic metrics are beginning to resonate, at least in the state legislators and at the governor's level. Because that's where the rubber meets the road. They are extraordinarily upset at losing the support for all of this industry and reshoring that was coming on in Britain. They are also extremely upset about the cost of energy and where it's going. So what I'm finding is that using the economic message with conservative leaders is more appealing than using the climate message, but it gets us to the same point, which is that we need to use the cleaner energy forms to power our economies, or we have to recognize that we're going to be paying a lot more down the line. And I do think that the State House and the governors are more aware or willing to be more open. Because they're closer. They live there. It's a different kind of mindset. But I agree with you. I've been with you at some of these events on Washington, and I know what you mean. Yes?
Has there been any impact yet on losing tax breaks and subsidies, and the current administration is actually canceling solar programs?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, will businesses, is there any positive that they'll carry on because they see the benefit?
Well, yeah, so one thing is that next year it's supposed to be 100% renewable because there's going to be new fossil fuel built a little bit, but there's going to be fossil fuels that are retired. It's the next couple of years that the pipeline is getting, I think for the short term, next year we're going to see a lot of growth in renewables. I also think that this AI pressure is going to force permitting changes, which will enable a lot more renewables. And that's because both fossil fuels need it and renewables need it. And dollars and cents, renewables are going to continue to decrease in price and continue to be chosen more. The other thing that I should mention is while the US is the second largest emitter, the rest of the world is moving. I mean, you're looking at Vietnam, you're looking at Brazil, you look, what's hydropower there, but South Africa. Places whose economies are growing and where most of the emission growth is expected to come from, they're hot, and they are finding solar as a major boon. So even as our country stalls a bit, others are moving ahead. So for a global perspective and for our grandkids, that's a good thing. Yes, anyone else? Oh my God.
Who is lobbying against these climate actions most vociferously? Is it big oil? Are there, who else? Who else is involved? Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Who's lobbying against renewables? Is it big oil? So it's interesting. Big oil actually takes a party line. All of the above, that renewables can't do it. We need to be in the mix, but they see it coming. But behind the scenes, I think they do play a lot in setting up roadblocks. I do. It has gotten so freaking political. There were attorneys generals who were coming out with antitrust laws against toothpaste manufacturers for sharing how to make toothpaste tubes recyclable because it's green. That's nuts. We all win by having toothpaste tubes being recyclable. Get the politics out, and on the left, I have to say too, and I'm pointing fingers both directions. There's been the sense that anything that happens has to also solve social justice issues, which are important issues. But if it doesn't do that, like a carbon tax, we won't accept it. So both sides are, and the problem has grown so big, we need to stop being stubborn, and as I said, all hands on deck, let's find the solutions. And the tech people and the entrepreneurs are doing that. But what we need now is policy to support it. All right, anyone else? Yes?
I have a question about the problem with their batteries.
Right.
And then the disposal of the batteries is environmentally insensitive under any circumstance.
So that's, so that we now have the ability onshore. There's a group called Redwood, which was started by one of the people that started Tesla with Elon Musk. They are in Nevada, and they recycle these batteries, but these batteries also have second lives. I just read a thing where someone has on their phone, their old battery charging, and it was in the Ukraine being used to power a house that had lost energy. And you can use them in third world countries to power refrigeration at convenience stores. So they have a lot of extra power. They're now being bundled and being used on utility for giving more stability on the grid. So they're very valuable. So throwing them away is not the right idea. Can recycle them. And I will say that most of these minerals can be recycled over forever, versus oil and gas, which gets used once. So yes, we have to be smart about it, but there's value there, and we have the technology now to access it. Okay, I've kept you guys long enough. If you have any more questions, but thank you. So appreciate this opportunity. Okay.
Perfect. Breath. Nice job. Okay.